Okay, so I'm going to do the best I can here. Since obviously, as I was saying, I can't really handle the camera and the resin at the same time. That's just not something I'm willing to do. But just to give a little overview, this is the vat. And you see there's a little corner there. That's for when you when you pour the resin back into the bottle. And it's a clear FEP film. And you can see that this one's starting to get a little old. It's a little scratched up. So I'm going to need to replace that one fairly soon. But what happens then is this is the cell phone screen, basically. It does have a tempered glass sheet protector on it. And then I have put a gasket to try to keep any spills from going down into the printer itself, because that's happened to me. So, but if you don't have the gasket, what you want to do is you want to put 2 pieces of masking tape right here. That will prevent this build plate from ever touching the screen on there, so when we level it. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to level it. So there is a screw right here that you loosen, and so you see that that's free. Then you want to stand up and align it so that it's going to go directly into the vat when you're ready, so it's still loose. And then down here on the tools menu, you got a manual, and then this right here is for leveling. And this is the beautiful thing over with these resin printers over like an FDM printer, is because they basically auto level, and that was such a pain with my FDM printer. So you see it goes in, it will get it set. Now, the way I've got it set right now, it's all the way down to the gasket. However, it is optional, but it's a good idea to leave yourself a little bit of space, just a little bit of air gap, because you need to make room for this FEP film. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up just a little bit, and then I take a paper towel, since you're going to go through hundreds and hundreds of paper towels. And as soon as that stops going up, I will stop it here. So I'll do it with the paper towel under it. And what that does is it'll give you just a little bit of extra clearance before it goes into the vat. Again, it's really optional. It doesn't make that big a difference. You're printing in layers of 5 microns, so it's fine. But I like to give it just that little bit of air gap, just to be sure. So then once it's down, you tighten it with the screw here. Otherwise, this is still loose and you just lost all of your alignment. But so now that build plate is perfectly flat. So now all you got to do is get this up high enough so that you can get the vat in. For me, I found that 8 presses of this at 10 millimeters, so 80 millimeters, will just barely clear the vat. So we'll let that go up. Oh, I'm on 10 millimeters. Okay, there we go. So that's going to be plenty. So the next thing we need to do is to fill the vat. Now, even though I'm not doing it at this particular time, it's a good idea actually to always set your vat on one of your microfiber cloths. Now, these microfiber cloths are what you use for wiping down the FEP film after you empty the vat back into the bottle. But one of the reasons why this is so scratched, and that's why I'm not terribly worried about it right now, is that you don't want to set it on something, like a paper towel or the garbage bag or whatever that you've got here. Try to set it on something soft like this microfiber cloth, and that'll help it last a little bit longer. Again, you just need enough for the ultraviolet light to come through. Eventually what'll happen is you'll start needing longer and longer exposures because you're getting less and less of the ultraviolet light to come through. But so just as a general rule, that's fine. Other thing, backing up, you'll notice that I have everything sitting on a garbage bag. This I found is really convenient. First of all, you never want to print without something underneath, because you're gonna push that model off of this plate. It's gonna go flying, and it's still gonna have wet resin on it, and so that's gonna get on whatever you're working with, guaranteed. It's all over anything you touch. It's going to be on your gloves, everything like that. So you always want something underneath. All right, so what I'm going to do is I need to pour the resin in here. So I'm going to put this on the tripod and then we'll come back. All right, so here's the resin. This is a brand new bottle. So I'm going to open the tape here. And the resin that I use is any cubic bioresin, eco resin they call it. And it's actually made from soybean oil. So this is it right here. Make sure you can see that on the camera. So this is white. I generally use clear. This is something I'm experimenting with right now, is to actually go ahead and print it in white. But the thing about this is the regular resin, if you get it on your skin, will cause fairly severe burns. And the fumes are toxic. You've got to wear a breather when you're doing this. Here there are no fumes. It's not toxic. It's safe for the environment. You have to use hazardous waste disposal with the other kinds of resin. You can't just put it in the garbage can. You certainly can't pour it down your pipes. Well, I probably still wouldn't pour this down the pipes in theory. It's not going to do anything to it. So anytime you've got your resin, make sure that you shake it up really good. That is very, very important, particularly in a new bottle like this. Shake it up really good. Now, one of my complaints with this vat is that there's no high level mark, so you really don't know how high to fill it. And what happened when I ended up having it spill into the printer was I had filled it too high, and so, Archimedes' principle, whenever this goes in, it overflowed. So I generally never fill it above maybe a little bit over halfway, but I find that I can't print a full, the full range of model, if I've got something that's big and still tall, because there won't be enough resin in there. I have not experimented with trying to add resin later. The big flaw in these kind of printers is that this is open. Somebody needs to develop a system where this stays closed and the resin vat stays self-contained. So far, this is the best we can do. All right, so I am going to pour in the resin. And like I said, I generally fill it maybe just a smidge over halfway. Wipe off this on the top, because if this cures, you will not be able to get this bottle open again. And you want to do this kind of as quickly as you can. Get that nice and tight. You want to do this as quickly as you can, because remember, it's daylight out here and it's exposing this to UV. So slide the vat in, get it lined up with the edge right there. I always double check to make sure that I'm going to go straight down into it. And then tighten the screws right there. And then put the top on. And I've actually slipped it when I moved the screws. So let's put that back. And it's not critical that it be exactly centered on it, because what matters is the build plate. All right, so everything's on and secure. My first job, I've got to put this away. Even though it is in a light tight bottle, over time the resin will start to cure inside and it won't be any good. So I always put this away. Now, it's not too cold right now. Normally, if I'm printing I'm going to print overnight or something like that, I cover it in a blanket to try to keep the heat up just a little bit. And you can see where I've already spilt a little bit on here, so that's going to happen. All right, so at this point we're ready to go. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to come back in close after I take my gloves off so that I can be sure I'm not getting resin on there. All right, we're back and everything is set up and ready. So we're going to go back to the main menu. We'll go to print, and they're stored in personal models here. And what I am looking for are RuneQuest models. And we will do the ones without the base to start off with. So So there it is. You press play. It will show you each layer that's being printed as this comes down. Once it starts, it'll give you an estimate of the time, and I find that it's actually quite accurate. So generally you're not going to be able to see anything, and you see how high up that comes. That can make you pretty nervous. All right, and we're printing. And so it says we have 4 hours and 53 minutes, and then we'll be finished. So we'll come back in 4 hours and 53 minutes, and we'll start with how we clean these, which is the really big pain with using a resin printer. Okay, looks like it's finished. So we're going to show you it's probably my least favorite part about the resin printing. The big disadvantage of resin printing is that with an FDM printer, you're done once it finishes printing. Here, you've got a lot of work to do, and it's actually pretty messy to get going. But you can see that the models seem to have printed successfully. They're all well stuck up to the build plate there. Printer software says that it finished, so that's good. So we're going to put this back on the tripod then, and we'll show you the steps we go through to get the models cleaned up and ready for printing. Okay, so first thing we've got to do is get the gloves back on. Got the dog out here with me, and he is laying on one of my gloves. So you don't want to reuse these gloves if there's anything at all on them, because they're really messy. I'll show you the best way to take them off to prevent gloves. It's a little surgical technique, but I didn't get any resin on these, so they're fine. So we will take the top off here, and as you can see, there's still resin in the tank, in the vat. So you've got to be really careful, because this thing is kind of awkward to hold on to. It's really easy for it to slip out of your hands, and then you have a huge mess. So one of my top priorities is to be able to get this tank back in the printer as soon as I possibly can, because as long as this thing's out there, there is a serious danger that I'm going to bump it or slip it, or the dog's going to knock it or something like that. All right, so to get the build plate off, this screw unscrews right here, and it came out pretty good. So then this is just a rubber scraper. You work it underneath the resin, and then it just pops off like that. And then you'll need another towel. Usually what I do is I keep the one that I used for leveling the printer. And first of all, I'll just wipe off initially the excess resin that's all over the build plate. And then, this is Sprayway Glass Cleaner. This is perfume grade alcohol. It's really good at breaking it down. Just make sure you shake it up good to get it nice and foamy. This cleans the build plate like no other. I mean, it does a really, really fantastic job on it. So I'm going to get another couple of paper towels here. You will go through tons of paper towels when you're printing. Okay. So the build plate's now clean. You know, when I was using the toxic resin, now you could actually touch it. You still can now, it's not that big a deal. And you see that I've got a mess here from where I've sprayed that stuff. Put that out of the way. Now, you've got two choices here. If you're going to print more, it's a good idea to go ahead and do your leveling procedures so that you're ready to go. Although, remember what I said, the longer this thing is out, the bigger the danger you have of something going wrong and spilling it. So we're going to do the same alignment procedure that we did before. I'll go to Tools, Manual, and hit the Auto Align. We'll let that come down onto the paper towel, and then we'll be good to go. And you can see how I've got the resin all over my gloves here. So anything you touch now is contaminated with that resin, and it gets everywhere. My whole printer is sticky just from, just from day-to-day operations from it. It does not clean off very well. 99% alcohol or isopropyl alcohol is pretty much the only thing that will do it, and even then it's kind of meh. So we're going to tighten that back up so that we're set. And all your tools will get covered in resin. This is covered in resin. I actually ended up buying these in bulk because they get so covered in resin that they just can't be used anymore. All right, so I'm going to hit this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This can now come out. As soon as the build plate gets up high enough, then we can put this back in. And see, I just dipped my finger in the resin. If I hadn't been wearing gloves, that would have been a bad scene, but now I've got resin actually on the outside of the tank, which is probably not a good thing. So I'm going to take that off. And you can use a regular paper towel on the outside. The vat is just steel, so it's not that big a deal. You just don't want to put this paper towel on your FLM, on your FEP film, the clear plastic film that's on it. All right, so we'll put this back on, and now we are reasonably secure. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to go ahead and clean up my tools as best that I can, so that I can get them out of the way. All right, and we are ready to go. All right, so the next thing we need to do is to clean off the resin, and you can still see there's quite a bit of wet resin on this. It won't completely cure, and even the models themselves are not cured yet. Even though the UV light is shining on them, they're still very soft. They are sticky, they're smelly, so you want to try to get as much of that off before we try to do the curing. And some people will just put the whole thing in the alcohol, and that works just fine. I usually try to break it off first. This is a pickle bucket, and the beauty of a pickle bucket is it's got this little piece that comes out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start pulling off some of the support material just to kind of get the model down something a little closer. Now for this particular one, actually maybe I'll just break it off like this. For this particular one, the base pieces, so for example we've got your restaurant's books and things like that, those are separate from the main figure, so I want to be careful that I don't lose those. But you can see that even though I've got a pair of side cutters for these, you don't really need it. That support material just comes right off, just like you would believe. So I usually give it a quick once over. Once this thing cures, getting the support material off is extremely difficult. So you see there's some underneath Veranda's helmet. I'm going to want to get that out eventually, but I can't do that with my fingernails. So, but for the most part, you want to make sure that you've got all of the support material off before you put it in the final cure. But for now, we're just going to put it in here so that we can get it cleaned up. This then is trash. I've got a little trash bag down here. So let's get Cedric going. Oh, and I just broke his arm. Oh well, that happens sometimes. I will try to glue that back on, but I will probably end up just reprinting that one. So that one's pretty much a waste, but you can see that's going to happen sometimes. Using the side cutters is a little safer in that respect. But the nice thing about having your own printer is that, you know, just print another one, no big deal. All right, so I need to get Ramcat out here, and he came out pretty good. There we go, so that's Ramcat. Gotta make sure we don't lose him. And then here's Lars. One reason why I try to use my fingers instead of the side cutters, which, you know, of course, as you see, can be a problem on its own, is that with the side cutters, you got to be really careful that you don't actually, you know, cut things that are important. I am less likely to break them off using my fingernails. Obviously, it happens. But, okay, that looks pretty good. And this is here Tardis, and he also has a sword that's sticking out like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just break off the support around the sword first, kind of fragile areas. And then we'll just gently slip him right out. And, you know, I mentioned earlier that you can print needles with this thing, and so that's basically what that is right there. And it's actually even sharp. Still a few, stray pieces of support material in there, but not much. I'll get rid of those later after I've got them cleaned up. Okay, so let's tackle your Estrin and her books here. Okay, here's one set of books. And the other set should be behind her, but I don't. Oh, there it is. Okay. So I'm going to try to break this kind of carefully so that I don't lose the books. Sometimes things go flying. Now to get the other stack of books out of here. So you see, unlike the support material for an FDM, getting this out is kind of trivially easy. All right, now let's do Aerith and his spirits that are down at the bottom. So I'm going to be real careful about that. I may need to get the cutters for this one. See if I can very carefully do that. I'm outside, so the wind's blowing my hair in my face. I can't see anything. Yeah, I'm going to need the side cutters for that. So let's go and get those out. And one thing we can do is just cut off the raft. Sometimes that makes it easier to get to. Spirit in there. I don't think so, but we're not going to throw that away just yet. Okay. There is the spirit. Oops, I dropped it. Here it is. Yeah, I'm going to be real careful that I track those to get those out once I've rinsed everything off. So the other two spirits actually seem to be attached to his feet, so that's a good thing. Right, so while I've got the cutters, we'll reach in here and get these out. I'm using them actually more as pliers than cutters, and in fact I have a pair of jewelry pliers that I used for a long time until I kind of developed the control to grab the pieces without actually cutting them. This I now use the side cutter because when I do need to cut, I don't have to switch tools. One more piece here. And just a little underneath. Okay. And so there it goes. Double check to make sure I didn't forget anything in here. Looks good. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to clean this up. Now, on the table here this thing is now pretty nasty with all of the resin. So what I usually do is I'll try to wipe it up as best I can. That is the spirit. So that's going there. Okay. I'll wipe this up as best I can, and then the trick is you ball up this with all the extra support material and then pull it off from the edge and you turn it right side out like this, or wrong side out. So now I've got everything together and it's ready to be thrown away. So all that's left then is to give these things a wash. This is a new bottle of alcohol, so get this opened up. And you just need to cover them. And Give them a good shake, and then we'll take it inside and just rinse it off with tap water, and then we'll be ready to put it in the cure. Okay, so I've pulled the pickle tray out of the box. You don't want to leave the miniatures in the alcohol for too long, because while the IPA will dissolve the uncured resin, that uncured resin then gets in the solution and will cover up your minis. If you leave it on there, it makes it really hard to get off, and you lose some of the detail. It fills in some of the gaps and things. So, I never leave it in there for very long. I just slosh it around, basically bring it inside. Then cover the tap, give it a good rinse. And as soon as you've rinsed off that uncured resin, even if you're not using bioresin, these things are okay to touch. They're perfectly fine. Okay. So they are still a little soft. They will, and a little sticky feeling. So we need to put them in the cure box. And what the cure box does, it just shines ultraviolet light on them. You could put them outside, but you'd have to do that for a couple hours, whereas the box concentrates it enough so that within just a couple of minutes you've got them nice and cured. So we're going to take it upstairs, put it in the cure box, and we'll pick up from there. Okay, so this is my cure station. Now, you don't need something as fancy as this. I use a UV nail dryer, nail polish dryer for a long time, works just fine. The intensity of the UV light in those is a little low. And also the one I had, you could only set to be like either like 30 seconds or 30 minutes. There wasn't a lot of control over it. And so sometimes I would over cure them. They get kind of brown and brittle, particularly if you're using the clear resin. So this one is kind of nice also because the UV lamps are inside. And then this is kind of clever. This is just a solar powered turntable here. And so it turns powered by the UV lights themselves. And then that allows you to expose it on all sides. If you've got your minis on a base, you generally only have to do one side. Since we obviously are going to have to lay these flat, I'll probably end up doing half and half. So there's your estrin. And let's do one quick check for support material. Because once you cure it, getting the support material off is actually quite difficult. Okay, that looks good. And this is Lars. A little bit right there, but I think we're good. And Aerith. Here is Varandath with his great sword. Don't know if that's a strap or support material. No, I guess that's a strap. Okay. And Fenric of the one arm. As that we're going to reprint him. Most of the time, if you put super glue on it and the model's still usable, it's perfectly okay, but I'm going to make sure we've got a good copy for these. Here at TARDIS. Looks like he's okay. And then the rest of these are going to be spirits and books. So I'm going to set the camera down here for just a minute so that I can pull those out. Okay, so the minis are in the curing. I had it set for 1 minute. We still got about 38 seconds left with that. That's just a start. We'll kind of see how that goes. You don't want to over cure them because they will become brittle, but on the other hand, it's better to over cure than to under cure because you don't want them to be sticky. Okay, so I will pick this up once we're done and we'll see how they look. Okay, so what I did was I flipped them over. They are basically done. They're still a little bit, I can feel a little bit of the tackiness, the rubberiness, not much. You really want these to just feel like a regular miniature by the time you're done. So we're going to dial in another minute and we'll let that run. And then I think they will be good to go and ready for shipping. Okay, and they're ready. So let's take it off and take a look. And that is just fine. That looks really good. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting these in individual Ziploc bags. If you've been playing a miniatures game for very long, you've got tons of these, and that way I can keep all the parts together. But in a nutshell, that is how I do my printing. And as you saw with Fenric, it's not without mishaps sometimes. I often will print doubles of everything all at once. Obviously, I filled the build plate with these right here, but that way, you get 2 chances for each one. It's cheap. Why not? It also gives you a second one that you can use for experimenting with different paint schemes and things like that. So if you've got any questions, just let me know, but I'll have these out and on the way. All for now. So just a quick PS here. I was able to super glue the Finn's arm back on, and he's good as new. I'm going to keep these for myself because I don't really care. It's going to be fine. So I'll print Dave off a new one. By the way, this is the best super glue for miniatures. The blue super glue gel does the best job on miniatures I've ever seen. I actually attach these to clear acrylic bases, flat acrylic bases that I tend to like. And if you're ever going to do that, then this is definitely Craftix number 33 acrylic cement is what you want to use. Super glue will actually cloud the base, and so you don't want to use that, but this does an excellent job. It's just really amazing.